And then that was the first time I was an important part of the team, I would say, at Austria Vienna. The chemistry was there was no egos, and they were unbelievable, the German national team. And they were all boys complaining and talking about how bad this player is in the national team and this player is in the national team. And I'm like, relegation battle in the Second Bundesliga, and we're bagging out players that have just, won the world championship. I think human beings in general, we're so we're always living for tomorrow, stressing about tomorrow, worrying about this, worrying about that, especially as a young athlete.
You are in Brazil. How was the tournament?
The World Cup experience, it's amazing that you're in the stadium. That's insane. The one thing though I was probably a little bit disappointed in regards to my national team career was during my best time, which was probably at LASK, where I probably felt like I probably should have got more opportunity. The first thing I did, because I said to my mum when I was 8 years old I would do it, I bought my mum a house when I was one of the first time I made money, so I did that when I was 19. And then...
Hello everyone, and welcome to the next Podball episode. The goal of this episode is to invite professional athletes and industry experts to discuss the various aspects of a sporting career. For more information about our services, please check the links in the description below. And one more thing. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and leave a 5-star review on Spotify. So now let's go back on today's conversation. Hi James.
Hello.
Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So James, what do I need to know about you in terms of experiences and influences that shape your character?
That's a difficult question to start with. What shaped my character, I guess, as with anyone, I guess it's upbringing. So where I came from, the influential people in my life, which I probably say was my mum and my grandparents growing up, and just the environment we grew up in. I guess that's something that shaped me and kind of projected me on my journey. So yeah, I guess my childhood is and was critical in that, I guess, with everyone.
Did you have someone else who was a football player in your family?
No. I was always just really, really sporty, and growing up in Australia, obviously you have a lot of different sporting influences, obviously, because there's a lot of different sports in Australia. It's a sporting nation. But my mum didn't want me to play rugby, so she kind of just put me into football, and because I was so sporty, I think regardless of what she put me into, I would have tried to do, and I was lucky enough to be at a young age. I guess better than the rest at a young age, we all probably were at that age. And so I just stayed in football and really enjoyed it.
And when did you decide that football is going to be your profession?
At a pretty young age, to be honest. We didn't grow up with too much money, and I guess I just decided pretty young, probably when I was about 8, that that's what I wanted to do. Communicated that to my mum, and that was kind of all I wanted. That was my plan A, and I stuck to my plan A pretty much.
And you had the full support from your whole family, I see.
Yeah, my mum, I mean, she was really, really supportive in regards to, she kind of just said, look, as long as you're happy, do whatever makes you happy. So she was never pushy at all. She was just wanted me to be happy. So if whatever I was doing was making me happy, it could have been as a footballer or as a garbage man or a politician or whatever. She just wanted me to be happy, and
as long as you were happy, that
was
what you wanted.
Exactly.
So you were 19 years old when you moved to Europe for the first time. Did you remember the challenge you faced?
Yeah, I mean, I guess challenges everyone faces when they move to across the continent to a new culture. You don't really think about it initially, because it was always just your dream as a footballer to land in Europe somewhere. I was lucky enough to get that opportunity. But the first 6 months were tough, like everything, for everyone when you change countries, new language. Obviously, I also went from, I guess, being a bigger fish in a small pond to being a small fish in a big sea in European football, and that had its challenges as well. And I went to a team that was established with really big players, and it was probably a little bit too big of a step for me at that time. So there was just all that going on, and which again I think is usual and pretty typical for someone when they make that kind of move.
And what kind of advice would you give to an athlete who is about to make the same move? Because we all leave our countries in order to pursue our dream.
Yeah. Look, I think that the one piece of advice I always give athletes is, or just people in general, is just be resilient, I guess. I think that's probably the biggest thing I learned. Life and football is never going to go perfectly. And I think if you have a dream, it might not always work out the way you expect it to, but I think if you're resilient and you stick to it, it'll work out how it's supposed to.
Yes.
And I think that resilience, especially at the beginning, it's something that I've kind of been conscious of my whole life, but my initial 3 years over in Europe, that was a time where I had to be resilient, and I think that's one of the most important things and lessons in life, because as I said, it's never turning out perfectly.
No, and I think through the challenges it's also when we see growth in ourselves.
Yeah, for sure, definitely.
And I read also recently the book from Carlo Ancelotti, and he mentioned players who leave their home country and come to a new country, they have 6 months to learn the language.
Yeah.
How was it with you?
It took me a little bit longer than 6 months, but I tried. I think that was also something I was really, first of all, I think it's a cool opportunity, right, to learn a different language. And growing up in an English-speaking country, you unfortunately don't grow up with a second language most of the time. So it was a bit of a challenge, but it was also, I think it's a respect thing. I think also, you sit in the change room, you want to understand everything, you want to understand the coach. And I think that's a really, really important part of coming to a new country, adjusting and adapting as a player and as a person, I guess. And as I said, I think it's a respect thing as well. I think if I come to a foreign country, I should do my best to learn the language. I shouldn't expect them to speak my language to me. So it took me a bit longer than 6 months, but I did my best, and the club was really, really strict in that regard as well. They gave us a teacher. If we didn't turn up, they would let the sports director know, and that was it probably took me around 2 years, but I could understand it pretty quickly, and I made the effort.
I think that's a process for everyone. In the beginning, you just can understand, but you are not able to speak the language. In my case, it was a few times the coach was also in the classes, so he just want to make sure that we do learn the language, and not we're just in the class and we make fun. So he just makes sure that we speak German, and he also let the teammates know that they have to speak in German with us. That was it. So I want to now move to the next question, which is Austria Vienna, and you were part of the last championship of the club. What do you remember from this time?
That was a really, really cool season. I think for me, going back to my first 3 years in Europe in Holland at AZ Alkmaar, that was a really difficult period. And then I got the opportunity through a teammate of mine at the time who was a bit of a legend of Austria Vienna, Joey Duliter. He kind of created the opportunity here. And then that was the first time I was an important part of a team, I would say, at Austria Vienna at that time. And we were luckily enough, it was a bit of a perfect storm. Kind of Peter Stöger came, and I think just the group and everything, it fit, and we had an amazing season. I think we lost like 3 or 4 games. We had a really, really cool group of boys. The chemistry was there. There was no egos. It was just and Peter Stöger is obviously an incredible leader as well, and he led us really well. And we were champions. We broke the points record, and we beat a Salzburg at that time as well. I mean, if you look at the players, it was a phenomenal team.
It was with Campbell, Soriano, Mane.
Yeah, so you can't. I think people probably overlook that, which was an achievement in itself, because that was an amazing team. But yeah, it was just a really special time for me personally, because it was my first full season. Yes. I was an important part of the team, and the team was amazing. The boys were amazing. The group was really cool. Austria Vienna is obviously an incredible club. So it was the first time I probably felt home away from home, you know what I mean?
And how important it is when you feel home, I guess your performance is even better.
Yeah. Then that helps a lot. And as I said, the boys in the team were amazing, and Peter Stöger created that really, really cool atmosphere. And then Austria Vienna in general has that kind of homey feel to it. So as I said, it was a bit of a perfect storm for me, and I was really grateful for it at the time. And
you qualified in Champions League.
Yeah.
How was it?
Cool. I mean, that's obviously what you dream of. It's difficult because you'd like to also compete, and I mean, we did well, but it was, you're playing against the best of the best.
It was Atletico, Porto,
and Zenit St. Petersburg. Yes. Yeah.
And you played all games, on Transfermarkt.
Yeah. No, it was cool. It was amazing. I mean, it was cool for the club, cool for the fans just to experience. It was a really, really cool part, I think, of Austria Vienna's history, and I was lucky enough to be involved in it.
It was also the first time that the club qualified in the Champions League, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what was the hardest opponent you faced during this group stage? Atletico.
Yeah, easy. That was just a different class. Yeah.
And what makes this team special?
Just their ability to shift gears, I guess, is probably the best way to explain it. They could change a tempo in a game according to what they wanted. They'd make you feel comfortable, and they'd hit you when they want to, and then they control the game. They'd give you possession, or they'd hold possession, and you could just tell that they were just dictating every second.
And the atmosphere in the stadium?
Cool. Again, that was really, really cool. Obviously, as I said, for our fans, it was amazing. And to play away in those kind of stadiums for a footballer, that's pretty special, especially, we're playing in Austria, so we're not always playing in that kind of atmosphere. So playing there was really, really cool.
Was it stressful for you?
I wouldn't say stressful. I guess, you get used to it as a footballer. And I, from a young age, I was lucky enough to be involved in big games with the national team and stuff like that. So I never really, I guess, fans and stadiums and stuff never really intimidated me in that regard, because I was always pretty focused on the game. So as much as I enjoyed the whole atmosphere and fans and that pushed me, I was always pretty focused on what I was doing.
That's really good. And you stayed in Austria for some seasons, and then you moved to Germany.
Yeah.
And you went to a team that played for relegation at the end of the season.
Yeah.
So we spoke about success and what comes with it, but what happens when you play for a team that plays for relegation?
Yeah, that was. It wasn't planned. I had a successful time here, and I was in contact with some bigger clubs, some First Bundesliga clubs, and I was in contact with Club Brugge for a period as well, and I was in the national team, and in the end I probably gambled, and I communicated Austria Vienna wanted me to extend my contract, and I just told them pretty early on, out of respect, I want to try something new, and I felt like I was in my comfort zone here, and I took a bit of a risk, and in the end it probably didn't work out, as you can tell. And I went to, and I had options I wasn't really happy with, and then I waited, and then in the end I had a couple of options, and I just thought, okay, I'll just go to Duisburg and play a season and see how it goes. Obviously, the Second Bundesliga is hard to predict,
yes,
because it's a little bit, everyone can beat everyone, and I didn't go there thinking it was going to be a relegation team, but in the end we were, and that was an experience again. I tried to just take everything as it comes, and it wasn't easy. It's very different playing for relegation. That's stressful, I guess, because people's jobs are on the line, and
of course,
all that kind of stuff. But again, I tried to take my lessons away from it. And
what did you learn?
Well, I learned that I probably didn't make the right decision. No, but I think in Germany we had good boys in the change room, and it was a good change room, but I kind of felt like, in particular in the Second Bundesliga, it was a little bit every man for themselves a little bit, and it wasn't necessarily that team atmosphere. And I think that, again, although we had really, really good boys in the group, it was just a very different mentality that I wasn't used to, and that took some adjusting because I, I'm someone who believes, I'm a big believer in team and culture and all that kind of stuff, and in that season it wasn't necessarily always like that.
Because you experienced that when you won the championship here in Austria. So you had this as a point of reference, and then you went to a club in Germany, and you felt it was a little bit different.
Exactly, and I won, before I left Australia, I'd won a championship as well when I was 18, and we had a really, really cool group, and that was like my first professional experience where I was like, oh, okay, it's just like this then. Everyone gets on with everyone, the culture's good, and everyone works for everyone and all that kind of stuff. And so it was, every club was a little bit different. Then I had AZ Alkmaar, which was a really, really high level club where we had unbelievable individual players, and that was very business-like. You'd go there and everyone was nice and everyone would work hard and we were really successful, but it was a lot more, business-like. And then Austria Vienna we had an amazing group, amazing culture, and were successful. And then I had Duisburg, which was very, the Germans there. The German mentality was just very different to what I came from and what I was used to. It was a little bit more negative to how I am. It was very much every man for themselves. It was, always look for the negative instead of the positive. And that was something I struggled with just because I'm not that kind of person and I didn't grow up in that kind of culture.
I'm just thinking now because I don't think so it's every club in Germany. Maybe that was the club.
I think that's why, and I've got to be careful when I say here, I think the reality is that's why we were relegation battle, and I think that was more a reflection of maybe Second Bundesliga as opposed to First Bundesliga, and that's why players probably kicked on to First Bundesliga.
I think it's also much easier when the team wins. The atmosphere in the dressing room is much better.
Yeah, for sure. But I even remember like one day we were in the gym, and I think at that time Germany had just won the World Cup. Is that right? Yeah. And they were unbelievable, the German national team. And I remember all the boys complaining and talking about how bad this player is in the national team and this player is in the national team. And I'm like, why relegation battle in the Second Bundesliga? And we're bagging out players that have just, won the World Championship. And it was just, it showed me that just they don't mean in a bad way, but they just tick a little bit differently. They just kind of constantly saw the negatives. And I think when you're in that situation as a group, that's probably not the right mentality. It's not going to help you out in the end.
So you played in Australian First League. You played also in Austria in the First League. And how was the level of competition comparing to Austrian First League and the German Second League?
Well, the German Second Bundesliga is obviously an amazing competition. Still, it's still a high level. It's just that was just a lot more physical, and the competition was tough. There was good players. There was really, really good players. But it was more man against man, a little less tactical, and it was just kind of follow your man and do your best and fight for the ball and all that kind of stuff. It was just a different kind of football.
And after Germany, you moved to China.
I had a short
Australia and then
Australia and then China. Yeah,
that is I think it's a decision that most of the time when we see a transfer like this, we think about the financial aspect. How was it for you?
Yeah, that was. I mean, it's a long story. I'll do my best.
I have time.
I'll do my best to keep it short. So again, I was in a situation where I waited a long time and nothing really came. And I'd never wanted to leave Europe. I didn't want to leave Europe. And in the end, I had an offer from an MLS club, but they only wanted to sign me in January. And so then I signed in Adelaide United, and I had a clause in my contract saying I could leave in January for free. So that was the whole idea of me going back to Adelaide, and then I'd go to DC United. That was the team. DC United pulled out, and I had this clause in my contract then in January. And Oliver Glasner had contacted me. He was at LASK, and he said he contacted me and said, if we go up into the First League, I want to bring you in. And I wanted to go back to Europe. But if I didn't use this clause in my contract where I could leave for free at Adelaide in that January transfer window, then all of a sudden a team would have to pay for me. And I knew I wasn't in a position where a team would pay for me because I just hadn't had a good year and a half. And then China came in. And I also knew, based on records in China, that generally foreign players don't stay there for a long period of time. So for me, it was a bit of a gamble. So I said to Oliver Glasner, look, I'll use this clause to go to China. And then hopefully, based on the records, they probably don't want to keep me there for a long period of time. And hopefully I can sign back in Europe with LASK if you guys get promoted. So it was all ifs and buts, and it was a bit of a gamble from me. But I'd had a lot of bad luck over the last year and a half. So I figured, okay, maybe things will work out. And the way it turned out is the Chinese club didn't pay me for...
Oh, they didn't pay you?
No, they didn't pay me. Well, our wages were overdue. And I was there with another Australian teammate of mine, Robbie Cruz, who'd gone from Leverkusen there. And we did everything by the book and by the law. We presented the club with the letters that we needed to and warnings and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, everyone probably in football knows the rule. If your wage is 90 days overdue, then you're able to leave as long as you do everything the right way. And in the end, I think it was middle of May, and it was the final day that we had to receive our wage, and the club hadn't paid us. And, we just handed in a letter and said, look, we're going to leave the club. And obviously the club, you guys owe us the money. Long story short, it was a bit of a battle and a bit difficult because we'd done everything the correct way. We were able to leave the club, and I was able to sign for LASK, which was the gamble I took. And obviously the fact that everything worked out perfectly timeline-wise and everything was a bit of luck. But my intention was never going to go to China to make money. My intention was to get back to Europe, and that was just the detour.
You didn't regret this decision?
No, not at all, because my dream was always to play in Europe, and so the money. If I never got money from China, it was irrelevant, and I didn't get paid for 4 months, so it wasn't. It was never about that, and I've never ever made a decision based on money in my career. And that's just me, and I would never also judge someone for making that decision. I think everyone's different, but in my head, it was I worked. Excuse the language. I worked my ass off.
Yes.
From a young age to have a European career, regardless of what that looked like. I just wanted to play in Europe. So I always made, every decision I made was the best one based on all the information I had in front of me. And it was never about, I want to make money. It was always about, how do I get to Europe? And so that's how China came about. And was what
How was this 4 months for you? Because I don't think so they speak English there.
Oof,
it was hard.
I'll tell you what, because I had gone there with the mindset of it's going to be football-wise, it's going to be challenging. And there was a reason I went there, because I wanted to go back to Europe. I just said to myself, just enjoy the cultural experience. And again, China's so far away from Western society, and I think I'm a big believer in just throwing yourself into the culture. And I love the cultural experience, to be honest, man. I made the most of it. I tried to enjoy that side of things. Obviously, football was pretty terrible, but I trained hard and just enjoyed the cultural side of it.
What about the level there?
Pretty not great, to be honest. I want to be careful what I say, because I don't want to be disrespectful. No, it wasn't. I didn't make the move for football, and so I was never really disappointed, because I didn't go there with much expectation. And
then you said you came to LASK.
Yeah.
So your Austrian career, to put it that way, it's between LASK Linz and Austria Vienna.
Yeah.
So we spoke about Austria, your time there. I'm not going to speak about the cities, because we both know that Vienna is much nicer.
It's an easy one.
But what do you remember? What is the best moment and your worst moment during your time in LASK? Because you stayed also for some years there.
Yeah. I was lucky enough to just get there during a really cool and successful period, and we had an amazing group of boys, really down to earth group, and we obviously had an incredible manager in Oliver Glasner at the time, and we had someone in Jürgen Werner, who was at the club, who also created, he was someone that looked after especially the foreign boys a lot. Him and his wife would invite all the foreign boys over for dinner and make sure we were,
team spirit is there.
Yeah, and just make sure it felt like home. And at that time, LASK was a very family orientated club, and had some really, really cool people within the club. We were obviously successful. We were playing some really cool football. We, spent so many seasons, but successful in Europe. We were pushing Salzburg. So yeah, I had so many amazing moments with a really incredible group of people. And it exceeded all of my expectations. I never expected it to be that successful.
Your best game?
We had so many. I was lucky enough to generally play well in Europe every time we played in Europe, and I had a lot of good games in Europe where, I think first group stage I scored a goal, which was nice. I think it was the first goal in the club's in European group stage history, and we beat Sporting 3-1 at home. We beat Sporting 4-1 away. We beat PSV 4-1 at home.
Wow.
We drew against Tottenham 3-3. We played Manchester United away from home. Like, we had so many incredible games.
Is that something you remember, like a player you saw that you saw, okay, this player, he belongs in this club? In terms of his qualities.
Playing against bigger players, yes. You mean?
Absolutely.
Probably Fernandez from Manchester United when he was at Sporting, and then the same season he was at Sporting, we played him, and then he was at Manchester, we played him. He was, in particular at Sporting, he was a difference maker. We lost 2-1 away from home against them, and that was probably our best game where we dominated them.
Yes.
But he was just the difference maker. He was incredible. He scored 2 goals, and that's why we lost 2-1, and he was pretty special.
What was the most impressive stadium you played in?
Besiktas was pretty impressive. Just the sheer volume and atmosphere, that was pretty insane. Again, that's a tough one. Sporting was cool. The disappointing thing about Tottenham and Manchester United was that it was Corona time, so we didn't have a full house.
Yes.
So that kind of, it was a bit disappointing. So I'd probably say Sporting and Besiktas.
What about your worst moment?
It's difficult because, I think football also gives you a lesson where you can't take yourself too seriously, right? So I try not to take myself and those kind of moments too seriously in football. I do my best to just stay steady in the good and the difficult moments.
Do you have any serious injury maybe?
I didn't really have any serious injuries. I think towards the end of my time at LASK, I had difficult moments with some people in the club because I felt like they weren't necessarily making decisions that were best for the team. And we had such a really cool and amazing group of boys and I couldn't understand it because I was like, well, you guys should be supporting us and not trying to break us apart and all that kind of stuff. And I was also a leader within the group. I was captain or vice captain or whatever. And generally you are going to go into battle for the team. And sometimes you're probably you're left standing there alone. And I had some difficult moments at LASK during that period, just based on battles I was fighting within the club and stuff like that. And that, the club pushed me out and then I wasn't playing and they were trying to push me out to leave. And that was their moments where, it's not fun. But again, I try not to take myself too seriously. I know I'm not the most important player in a team and football works with or without me. So I just tried to take them all as lessons and not stress too much about the situations.
You're also one of the captains now. So how do you lead the young footballers that you have in the team? What is your way?
I think first of all, lead by example. I think that's really, really important. And I think also one of my big things is I think everything that you do and every decision that you make should always be with the intention of, even if you're sometimes going to make wrong decisions and not always behave in the right way, but it should always be with the intention of, okay, this is what's best for the group and this is what's best for the club. And I think as a leader, that's really, really important. And it should never, ever be about this is what's best for me. And it should never be about this will give me an advantage. It should always, regardless of what the outcome is for you personally, should always be with the intention of this is what's best for the group. And I think that's, as long as you're leading in that way, I think you're doing a good job.
Yes, and in that way also it's going to be also good for you, because if the team does well, then you probably are going to
for sure. But sometimes it's going to put you in uncomfortable situations, right? Because leading also means you might have to confront, I don't know, people, might have to confront the coach, you might have to confront the club, you might have to, and with the, and it might put you in an uncomfortable situation where, you
can't please everyone.
Yeah. And it might affect at the end of the day, your position within the team, in the coach's eyes, or the club's eyes, or whatever it is, or the fans' eyes, or whatever. And I think it's still, your job is still to represent and protect and support the team in any way possible based on what's best for the team. And I think that's a really important part of leadership.
And that's a nice message that you said. So now you came back to Austria for the second time. So how has been the season so far? This season now.
For me personally, or for the
in general, for you personally and also for the team.
For the team, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. I think we probably haven't. Definitely. If I can be honest, we probably we haven't achieved what we set out to achieve. I think top 6 was always our goal. We wanted to try and go far, try and get into the group stages in Europe and all that kind of stuff. So we probably didn't hit those heights, and I just think we've just been inconsistent in our performances, and we haven't been able to maintain that level that we want. For me personally, started well, but broke my toe, got red carded. Other boys came into the team. The coach, which a coach does, made decisions for other boys, which is a part of the job as well. And I was playing more of a supportive role, which was fine. And I was doing my best to support the team from the bench or wherever I was at that time. I came back recently and played a couple of games, which was nice. Unfortunately, got injured again, which is a part of the game. For me personally, roller coaster. For the team, bit of a roller coaster as well.
And how do you support the team now from the bench? Because every player wants to play.
Yeah.
But still, you have to keep a positive attitude.
For sure.
Though you are not in the first 11.
100%.
So how do you do it?
Oh, again, it goes back to what I was saying before about understanding that you're not the most important person in the team. It's always about the team. The team is above everybody within the club. And I think you have to put your ego aside and say, okay, well, what does the team need in this? What does the team need from me? And that might be bring positive energy, support the players, coach the players, in whatever capacity you can help the group, and understand that my role right now is a supportive role on the bench, and never bring negative energy into the group. Still always train high, still always maintain your standards, still always drive standards, and that's my mentality, and that's kind of what I try to do as a teammate.
Obviously, you have experienced so many things in football, but have you ever questioned your abilities as a player?
I think everyone has. Yeah, I think it's a normal part of being successful, right? There's always a bit of an imposter syndrome, and I think that's healthy, that's normal, that's fine. And I think as well, as a professional athlete, you go in every day with the idea of, I want to find my edge. I want to get better. And in order to get better, I need to find that edge and push it back and push it back. And if you're going every day with that mentality and pushing yourself, then you're constantly figuring out your limitations, right? And that's confronting, and that means there's going to be moments where you doubt yourself, and but that's normal. I think if you're not in that place of uncomfort, you're probably not growing. And that comes again with doubting yourself and having those moments. Obviously, as I get older, I think something that I've learned as I got older, which is really important, is to accept my strengths and weaknesses and to identify my strengths and weaknesses and be okay with that. And that means you're probably going to have less moments where you're doubting yourself. But yeah, I do have those moments. I have had those moments.
And did you work mostly on your strengths, or you said, okay, these are my weaknesses and this is where I have to work on?
It's a good question. I think it's really important for young players to identify their strengths and weaknesses. Doesn't mean you don't have to work on the weaknesses, but I think to understand, okay, well then this is what I bring the team and this is where my strengths lie, and playing my game based on those strengths, right? So something I'm good at is bringing structure into a team. I coach a team. I'm good defensively, stuff like that. And so I know, okay, this is what I bring to the team. With the ball, there's players in the team that are a lot better than I am. So I get the ball and I give it to them, and that's fine. And I think if you're able to identify that, it will make you a better player. And it'll make you a better player for the group as well. Doesn't mean you don't have to work on the weaknesses. You still should, and hopefully improve those parts of your game. But to identify and accept them and understand what you bring a group, I think will benefit every player, I think, for sure.
And I believe also the clubs pay attention in the physical part of the game. But how is important for you the mental aspect?
Oh, hugely important. What ties into the mental aspect, I think, is also leadership. And I think leadership is tough to find in today's world. I think just, again, I want to be careful what I say, but I think it's hard. It's getting harder and harder to find good leaders, and probably players that are mentally at that level and able to lead a group and be a good leader within a group, and also fit into a group and all that kind of stuff. And I think, especially at our level, because we're not Real Madrid, and I think that's why that side of the game is so important, because for us that's a difference maker. So I think that's a massively important aspect in the game. Yeah.
But why then the teams don't pay attention to it? Because we train every day. They're going to show how you pass. They're going to show you how you shoot. They're going to show you tactically where you stand in the pitch. But they're not going to provide you with the tools how to deal with the certain situations, which are very important in football.
Yeah.
And probably if you have these tools, you're going to perform even better.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's down the pecking order, right? In what people see as, or in general, what football sees as what's important. And I think the mental side of the game is probably the side of the game that has the most room for improvement, and also room for attention. So how much attention do we give to it? And that's it's difficult, because also you got to look at clubs financially, right? Financially, they say, okay, we don't have huge amounts of money. Where do we prioritize? And the mental side of the game is probably not going to be at the top of that list. So something's got to give. But I think in the future, and I think it'll become more and more important. It's just taking
a bit of time.
Yeah.
Now, and moving to my next question is, how do you prepare yourself mentally before a game? Probably you have the tools now.
Yeah, I think it's a bit different as you get older, right? So I understand how I tick. I understand what I need. I place a lot less pressure on that side of things and myself, and I'm able to whether things go well or don't go well, I'm able to just kind of stay in the game and stay steady and stay mentally steady. But obviously that comes with experience.
Yes.
And I wasn't like that when I was younger. You know, I was a lot more fragile, which is normal. I think that is often the difference between young players that are successful. Obviously, first of all, you've got some young players that just have incredible ability. But I think if a young player is able to just be really steady mentally from a young age and kind of mature in their decision making, in their ability to deal with situations, I think quite often that's what gives them the advantage a lot of the times. But yeah, in regards to preparation now, to go back to your question,
Yes.
Because I know myself, I place a lot less pressure on it, and I just think to myself, okay, how can I best prepare my body? And that's what I focus on. So yeah.
And do you have specific routines?
I do, but it's not. Again, I try to take a bit of pressure away from that and say, okay, this is what ideally how I would like to prepare myself. If I have enough time, cool. If I don't, that's fine. But that's all just based around preparing my body for 90 minutes of football.
So now we're moving to your time with the national team, and I think representing your country is one of the greatest achievements you can have as an athlete. And I want to ask you, how was it for you to be part of the World Cup in Brazil?
I think you nailed it. Representing your country is for me the number one, and something I was always really proud of. My national team career is it's a tricky one to look back on, because I don't think I took the opportunities when I had them. I wasn't good enough in moments. Mentally I wasn't good enough in moments. A good example is the Brazil World Cup. Before that, the coach, I know I was in his starting 11 plans. I didn't do well before the tournament. Didn't play then. So that tournament was probably bittersweet because it was cool to be a part of it. But then I know I didn't take my opportunities. Other players did.
Looking back, what did you do wrong? What could you change?
I just mentally, I wasn't in great form at my club. I just mentally, I probably wasn't mature enough, to be honest, to deal with. I was probably a bit overwhelmed. I'd worked really, really hard to get myself into a position where I was probably going to be able to start for my country at a World Cup, and then I just didn't take the opportunity. And I think, that's, first of all, that's my responsibility. And I'd never blame the coach in that situation. And I just, I wasn't in a mentally strong enough place to be there and be ready at the time.
And what do you remember from this time now? You are in Brazil. How was the tournament?
The World Cup experience, it's amazing because but it's, as a player, you are protected from a lot of it, right? Because it's so strict with security. You're at the hotel, you train. But that 90 minutes that you're in the stadium, that's insane. Yeah, and it's Brazil as well, right? So football, that was insane. That was a really, really cool experience. I think as a fan, you have a lot more to experience, because as a player, you're really protected. But, as you said at the start, to represent your country is the most amazing thing.
And you said because the World Cup was in Brazil, and I was in Brazil for holidays, and the football is everywhere.
That's religion.
Yes, and that is insane. I saw people like in the beach, like playing football, like with amazing technique and quality. And then you say, how is football here?
Yeah.
So I saw also on Transfermarkt you played some really good games with the national team, like with good opponents.
Yeah.
What do you remember? What was the best game you had during your time with the national team?
For me personally, I had a really good game once away to South Korea. And otherwise I was so young, The one thing that I was probably a little bit disappointed in regards to my national team career was during my best time, which was probably at LASK, where I probably felt like I probably should have got more opportunity. For whatever reason, the coach decided against me, which is, again, a part of football, and I had to accept. I didn't necessarily think it was fair, though, because I felt like I had done enough to get a lot more opportunities during that period. But that's football and that's life sometimes. So you have to accept it, obviously.
How is it when you go back home? Because you represent your country in a big tournament. Now you go back to Australia from time to time. How is it? How people perceive you?
To be honest, because football is a big sport, but there are a lot of other sports that are, compete with in Australia. So it's probably not what you think it's like. I'm I get recognized a lot more in Vienna than I do in Australia. I'm now in Australia a small fish in a big pond. But in the football community, obviously people do recognize you and stuff like that. But it's, again, I said it before, football, and I don't mean this in a pessimistic way, but it teaches you not to take yourself too seriously, because you're 1 second hero, the next second is zero, and that's fine. I think that's good. I think, being modest and in life is important, and I think that lesson's a really good lesson to learn, to be honest. And yeah, my national team career has taught me that lesson.
Let's talk now about the athletic retirement, which I always try to touch in these episodes, because I think it's important for all athletes. It's also an event that we are all going to face one day.
Yeah.
So the sooner you prepare for it, the better it's going to be. This is what I believe. And I love the quote from your former coach, Mr. Postecoglou, that you shared in another interview. He said, "Life is short, a football career is shorter. You never know when your last game is going to be." So now that you are 34, and while you still have some years to play, if you choose to, are you afraid of retiring?
I'm not afraid of it, no. I think the mistake that a lot of footballers make is they identify themselves purely as a footballer, right? Instead of the human being first.
Yes.
And again, going back to that lesson, I've said it enough now, you learn not to take yourself too seriously, and football is going to work with or without you. And I think I've had enough ups and downs in my career to kind of understand that I need to first see myself as a human being and not just a footballer, and build that kind of balance in my life, and I started from a really young age to prepare myself for life after football. I studied, and I was always someone that was really curious, and I prepared myself pretty early on and I get excited, to be honest, about. I know I'm grateful for the fact that I am a footballer, and I'm really, really appreciative of that. But I get excited about the possibility of life after football, and hopefully we still have 2/3 of our life ahead of us, and that's exciting as well. And the lessons that we've learned in football, to take them elsewhere, can be a really, really cool thing, I think.
So what are your hobbies outside of sports?
Hobbies. Living life, mate. I enjoy myself, to be honest.
That's very cool.
Yeah, I live in the city. I love visiting cafes, restaurants, hanging out with friends. Something that I really appreciate and understand the value of is community. So I try and always build a nice community around me, and try and tap into that as much as I can.
So I will give you a list afterwards, because I have in every district the best restaurants and the best coffees. So you said that you took some time to educate yourself.
Yeah.
What did you study?
I did a double degree in psychology and sociology.
Okay, that's very interesting. Yeah. So where do you see yourself once you retire?
Firstly, I studied just more so to keep my brain ticking over, and psychology and sociology and people and social situations is something that have always interested me from a young age. I don't know why. I always was interested in it. And it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to go into that line of work. It was more, okay, I understood that it interested me, and also it would help me in every line of work. And then I did some other stuff around that, coaching badges and all that kind of stuff. And wherever that leads me, I'll figure out once I get to that stage. But I know I'll have, I hope I'll have some cool opportunities, and I'll just make the best decision with what's in front of me.
And now you're an athlete who had the fortune to sign some good contracts throughout his career. And a lot of athletes don't know how to invest their money wisely. And I want to ask you, how did you do it? Because I think you need to have the right people around you.
Yeah. The first thing I did, because I said to my mum when I was 8 years old I would do it. I bought my mum a house when I was the first time I made money. So I did that when I was 19. I always kind of invested my money, but I also lived life. So I understood, okay, I'm not going to take my money with me. So I appreciate life, and I think you should enjoy life, and restaurants, cafes, and all that kind of stuff. I'd like to spend money on experiences, and aside from that, I invested money in property. I invested money in some shares. I invested money in some riskier business opportunities. But I just made sure I had kind of a good balanced portfolio, but I also lived my life at the same time. I wasn't stupid, but I also wasn't scringy, and I tried to find a good balance.
So now we're coming to an end. I want to ask you a question that I mostly end this conversation with. Imagine you wake up tomorrow and you have all the experiences you have until today, but you are 18 years old. What would you say to yourself starting your career as a professional athlete?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I'd probably tell myself to relax, breathe, and enjoy. I think I think human beings in general, we're always living for tomorrow, stressing about tomorrow, worrying about this, worrying about that, especially as a young athlete. Yes. My career's over, I'm not playing, and I think I'll just say relax. You know, you're going to have a really cool ride, enjoy every bit of it, and live every moment of it, and be present, because
present is really important.
Be present, yeah. Don't worry about the future or regret the past. Just be present and live every moment. I think that's what I would tell myself. Breathe and be present.
So now we have the 5 last questions that you have to reply to them either by saying one word or just a phrase, and that would be no more surprises. So who has been the most influential figure in your career?
I'd say my mum.
What did you learn from her?
From my mum?
Yes.
I too many lessons. I learned resilience, I would say. Resilience. I learned from my mum.
It's an important one.
Very important.
So your contract with Austria Vienna is expiring at the end of the season. Do you have any plans?
At the moment, I'm just going to see what comes.
What is a mistake you made in your career and you wish you hadn't?
I'll say normally to be honest, I'm not someone who lives with regrets. So everything happens for a reason. But because I'm an Austria Vienna player, I'll say right now, I slipped over in the final against Red Bull, playing for Austria Vienna, and they scored won the first goal, and then we ended up losing the cup final. So that's something I definitely regret.
Absolutely.
It'd be nice if it didn't happen.
Who was the best player you played with, and who was the best player you played against?
Best player I played with, I don't think people are going to know him, but probably Marco Bresciano, an Australian national team player. Best player I played against. Messi. It's an easy one.
Wow. So who do you consider the best Australian football player of all time?
Again, I'd probably say Marco Bresciano then. He probably doesn't get the credit he deserves.
And that would be all. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, and I hope a lot of athletes are going to resonate with what you said. And I wish you all the best for the future.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.